To take care of yourself is not selfish. To take care of yourself creates a model for others to take care of themselves. Well, that got your attention. 3 whistles rang out, and I knew what that meant. I was a lifeguard. I was 19 years old, and 3 whistles on the beach meant someone was missing. I ran down to the main stand, and the captain of our field shouted the order. They lost someone at field 3. It's a search and rescue. Go. 10 of us ran down the beach to join the search team. There was already a crowd, and people were pointing to where they last saw the missing swimmer. We dove into the ocean, and we swam out past the breakers. We formed a straight line, perpendicular to the shore, and started our search pattern. We dove down about 10 feet into the cold, dark Atlantic Ocean. We swam into the current, and we came straight up for air. And when everyone's head popped up, we repeated the process again and again and again. We were exhausted, but we didn't come in. After more than an hour, I heard those whistles again. It was an awful feeling. We weren't done. We didn't find him. We got out, we ran back to our beach, and the captain of our crew led us in a moment of silence. And when we opened our eyes, he looked at each of us and said, "No one goes down in our water. At this field, no one goes down on our watch." And then he said something to me I will never forget. You either make the save or you die trying. Just a little intense, huh? We took that mantra seriously. No one goes down on our watch. And for 7 summers, thousands and thousands of rescues later, we never lost anyone again. What would it be like if every time you went to work, someone's life was on the line? How about that for a context? What would it mean if you showed up to work less than your best, less than your 100%, exhausted even? What would happen? The fact of the matter is, we are all guarding. All of us are guarding something in our lives. In fact, many things. Isn't that true? We're guarding our families, aren't we? Yes? We're guarding our clients, our customers, our businesses, our health, our relationships. That guarding takes a toll. I was 18 years in the practice of law. I used to wake up in the morning and I would put my feet on the floor and I would feel the weight of my responsibility. I would wake up in the middle of the night. Sometimes I had trouble falling asleep. Sometimes I had trouble staying asleep. And I would wake up and I would feel tired. Even after I'd had a sleep, I would still feel exhausted to begin the day. I came home one night after many years of doing this work over and over again. You know, I said earlier, the first rule in the book is to stop doing what doesn't work, but we often do the same thing over and over again, don't we? Yes? Expecting a different result, and that's the definition of what? Insanity. I did that until I couldn't do it anymore. I walked in the house. It was a cold, rainy night. I was dripping. I saw my wife's face. I saw the look on her face. It was a look I'd seen many times before. It was the look that told me, You missed the kids going to bed again. Wasn't home for dinner. Didn't get to tuck them in. Didn't get to read them a bedtime story. Again, I walked right up to her, and I said, if I keep doing what I'm doing, you're going to be a widow. She took a breath. We both took a breath. She smiled. This is what I love about my wife. One of the things. She said, we'll figure it out. We'll figure it out. And we didn't have to. I didn't have to have the proverbial midlife crisis. Wasn't necessary. I didn't need to move to Fiji, even though that would have been pretty cool. I didn't need to quit my job or jump ship, as the saying goes. I just needed to pivot. Instead of having a midlife crisis, we could plan for and create a midlife calling. And ultimately, over the course of 2.5 years, we made some decisions. We did some things differently. We moved in the direction of the unknown, as scary as that was. Wrote a book with this title. And I'm going to share some things with you today that are very important, both in my own personal life and in my professional development as well, about the essential turnaround, which is for many people in this room, a turnaround from a model and a way of being that's all about doing more. It's about exhaustion. And turning that around into a model that's really about productivity. It's really about being, experiencing life, and about resilience. You can't win a race if you don't finish the race. Isn't that true? Resilience is the competitive advantage we had at the beach. 19 years old, I'm working at this beach, and I'm learning lessons about life and leadership that I've been thinking about ever since. Because it's the way that you create the highest possible capacity. It's how Olympic athletes create their capacity, their performance, their longevity. Without that, we cannot succeed. We cannot succeed for long. So today, I'm going to share these lessons in resilience that came from my experience as a lifeguard, as a CEO, and even as a lawyer. It starts with this. What is that? What is it? It's just a straight line. A straight line, but it represents so much of our programming. We are all a product of our programming. We are a product of our past in so many ways. This line represents what we've all been taught since the time that we were little kids, just little teeny tots. And that is to not make mistakes. That's what that straight line represents. It's linear. Don't make mistakes, because mistakes have a price. The goal is to be safe, to succeed safely. I started thinking about that, and I was like, this is the goal? We should be safe. We should get through life making the fewest mistakes possible. Where does that leave us at the end of our days? Where does it leave us? Safely dead. There's a conflict. How do you reconcile? Anybody interested in becoming safely dead? Anybody in this room? Not a hand. Yet we commit to this. We commit to the status quo. We commit to what we know because it's what's safe. The problem with that is that it leads to something else. It leads to stagnation. Stagnation will kill an organization. It will kill an organism. When something stays still, does not move, at some point, it's finished. Water stays stagnant, it becomes toxic. It's the same with our relationships, it's the same with our health, it's the same in every area of our lives, that the status quo turns into mediocrity. And it's the part of our life that is a blind spot that becomes the greatest challenge in so many ways. This gentleman, maybe you recognize his picture, his name is Buckminster Fuller. He was a futurist, a scientist, a philosopher, a writer, a teacher. He's most probably well known, at least in North America, for being the creator of the geodesic dome. That's the dome that sits at the front of Epcot Center in Orlando, Florida. He was fascinated with so many things in technology at the time. He was studying these big ships. These giant ships, when they were first being developed, had one big problem. It was difficult for them to turn. They were not very agile. They had these giant rudders, this massive rudder sitting on top of this massive ship that couldn't turn. It was a problem until someone created something called a trim tab. Everybody do this. Take your fingers like this. Just go ahead and put it up like this. Go ahead. This is a trim tab, a tiny little rudder. A tiny rudder that sits on the big rudder that turns the enormous ship. The small rudder turns the big rudder that turns the big ship. I thought, what a great example of the pivot principle that I wanted to share with you tonight about making small changes. A small change is all that's required in any situation to break the status quo. We think life is linear, but there isn't a straight line in the universe. Not one. To live in harmony with that universal law is what we're talking about. What we seek to do is unnatural, to keep things the same, to argue for things being the same because there's predictability in it. When all of our growth comes from making a small change, even a 5-degree change in your direction changes everything. You cannot change the input without changing the output. It's science. Scientifically proven you cannot change one thing without the output changing. We've got to be able to change how we see things. And how we see things, our perception, is based on our beliefs, our programming, and our beliefs create our behaviors. So the second thing that I want to share with you is that we've got to look at our mindset and reframe certain aspects of how we see the world. We know that fear is a perception. We talked about it earlier. That's all it is. It's a perception. It is not a reality. So what do we do when we're faced with fear? What do we do when we're faced with uncertainty in our businesses or in our personal lives? We apply a simple system. This is what I've been doing for years. I did it today on my way to a place called Don Quixote that some of you know. I went there to find some gifts and things that I was taking home to the United States. And I was out on the streets in this beautiful city of Tokyo, and I was lost. And it reminded me of a time when I was a child when I got lost in another big city, New York City. And I was very frightened. I felt very threatened. And I could feel that coming up again. And so I said, well, this is perfect. I'm going to speak about this tonight. What do I do? What do I do in this moment? I neutralized my thoughts for a moment. Just for a moment, I said, maybe there is no threat. Maybe it's not good or bad that I'm lost. Maybe it's not right or wrong. Maybe it's nothing. Maybe the only meaning I'm giving this is the meaning that I give it habitually based on my past. So I neutralized my thoughts. I suspended my belief, in other words. And then I looked for the creative opportunity, which is something my wife reminds me about all the time. It's so important in business that we are constantly looking for the creative opportunity in every situation. So I looked at the creative opportunity. I said, you know what? I'm lost. I'm on my way to this place. I don't know where it is. I don't speak the language very well, just a little bit. And I approached people on the street. And before long, I was there. I was there because I had forged new relationships with people. I had a good time. I learned my way to that store today. I found the creative opportunity that existed. And then I recalculated. You can recalculate your position from anywhere. It's just GPS. What happens in your car when you make a wrong turn? What does your GPS say to you? If it's speaking in the car, what does it say? Does it say, "You idiot! I can't believe you went wrong"? It's just like your father said. You never listen to directions. Is that what your GPS says? It just says what? Recalculating. Recalculate your position from anywhere. We can get anywhere else simply by recalculating a way, a route, a new route. Recalibrate your perception. We're asked to be doing this all the time, all of us, all the time, to do more with less. Since 2008, we're being asked to do more and more with less and less. Does anybody know what I'm talking about? Raise your hand if this is true in your experience. Yes. The problem with that is it's exhausting. This is Japan. These are the statistics. They're not much better in other places in the world, but I'll just say this. If you're from Japan, you live in Japan, you work in Japan, you are the most sleep-deprived workforce in the world, with the exception of Singapore. Germany, 5th on the list. It's costing Japanese businesses 600,000 working days because they have an exhausted workforce. Almost 3% of GDP, $138 billion of real money based on lack of productivity, health and safety costs, absenteeism, and in the United States, turnover. Not as big an issue here. Huge issue in North America. Millennials turning over, leaving their places of employment every 18 months. We all know this guy. Who remembers this movie? 1976, Rocky Balboa. I was in Don Quixote today and heard the theme song to Rocky. It was incredible. Da-da-da, da-da-da. I was 10 years old again. 9 years old. What's great about Rocky is he gets knocked down, and what happens? What does he do? He gets knocked down, and he gets what? Gets back up. Knocked down, back up. Knocked down, gets back up. And this is what most people think resilience is all about. Rocky wins our hearts in that movie. He wins our hearts, but he loses the fight. And he don't look too good either. He's all banged up. And so many of you are all banged up. Resilience is not about endurance. It's not the Rocky model. It's about recovery. It's the Olympic model. In fact, Harvard Business Review did a great study of the top performing athletes, Olympians, and business executives, and they found one thing in common that they all had. They had rituals to raise their capacity through their recovery. Rituals for recovery. Because this is the relationship between recovery and capacity. We know that because every single day you plug your phone in, obsessively you charge that phone. We all do. And our laptops and our other devices, because we know if we don't plug them in, what happens? They run out of juice. And so many of us are running on empty. This is our answer. Get a dog, right? Reclaim your energy. Reclaim your capacity. I'm so happy to be at this gathering. So honored that the Fuso talk was devoted to turnarounds, because this is the essential turnaround for all of us. At the beach, if we showed up less than our best, if we showed up on the lifeguard stand, and we're all lifeguards in this room, if we showed up less than our 100%, someone died. Someone could be lost. What are you doing to take care of yourself? What are your rituals for recovery, morning, afternoon, and evening? That's a picture of me. I was at the Shibuya pool nearby here. And I found that pool as soon as I landed. because I knew that that would be my method for recovery. I knew that I needed to sleep while I was here. There'd be a great time difference, time change, and all that. I have more energy in the last 2 days than I even had before I left because the food is so good here. And I mean it. My morning routine, my congee, my pho, my dim sum to start the day, the sushi, I'll eat it morning, noon, and night. Good stuff. Sleep. Taking a nap in the middle of the day even, for 20 minutes. Recharging, in other words. How do you routinely and ritually, you ritualize to habitualize. How are you taking care of yourself as though, and this is the point, other people's lives depended on you being at your best? Because isn't that the truth? There are so many people that you impact. You are that little trim tab. Even in the midst of a big organization, you can make a massive difference. But only if you're around and only if you're at your best. Isn't that true? When I was running a mid-sized company recently, I had rituals for our teams that they'd get out and walk for 20 minutes a day. 20 minutes to go see something green. That they would have a specific time each week where they would have moments that they could text people their appreciation. How often it is in the midst of our busy lives, we don't make time to say, I appreciate you, thank you, I'm sorry, whatever it is, because we're just so busy and we wear it like a badge of honor. And how do we celebrate with one another? This is not soft stuff, by the way. This is about as tangible. I've been doing my work for a long time. I haven't found anything yet that's more tangible to raise the productivity of a team, to raise the morale of a team, to create longevity in that team, to create loyalty in that team. Our crew at the beach was solid. It was built on these principles, and Microsoft just recently experimented with some of them right here in Japan this past summer. They went down to 4 working days. They gave everybody Friday off. Friday off. I'm not going to ask anybody to raise your hand if you'd like to have Friday off. I'm just going to say, because I know that might not be popular, but wait, productivity went up by 40%. Not only did productivity go up by 40%, but they reduced the cost of paper and electricity, so it was a double hit. To me as a CEO, there's 2 things that I always want to know. How are you bringing revenue in, and how are you saving us money? It handled both of those things. Naps are getting a good rap again, which is terrific here in Japan. That people are recognizing, some companies are recognizing that to make time in the day for a 20 or a 30-minute nap will feel like a 4-hour sleep for many people. Just to close your eyes, to relax, to come back. We were up an hour, down an hour. We worked an hour in the lifeguard stand, and we were down an hour taking care of ourselves. That's what our teams were doing on the beach. Resilience is holistic. It's not the Rocky model. It's not just physical. It's mental. Most of us are tech fatigued. There's something called constant cognitive arousal. That means we're looking at our phones 150 plus times a day, 2.5 hours of sunk time. We don't have time for our minds to recover. And our competitive edge is to recover. One of our clients, we're in the consulting space, and one of our clients is a CEO of a fairly large company, and we came up with a recovery map for her, because every 3 months, she found that she was completely out of battery. She was completely drained to the point where for 3 days, she just had to be in a dark, quiet room. For 3 days, running a company. A lot of things can go wrong. A lot of things can require the attention of a CEO for 3 days. So these were her small changes, those little changes that you make that over time create a massive distinction or difference in the result. The input changes, the output automatically changes. These were her. These were hers. Work remotely 1 day a week. Pick up an old hobby. We were talking about that in the green room just before. What's your old hobby that maybe you could pick up? Hers was needlepoint, knitting. Could you take a nap in the day for 20 or 30 minutes? Could you take a walk for 20 minutes? The health benefits of just 20 minutes of walking is incredible. And for her, instead of watching the news, especially in North America, there's no good news. No good news. She's watching the news before bed. No wonder she wasn't sleeping well. No wonder she wasn't waking up rested. Most of us think that stopping is recovering, but it's not. Because if what you're doing when you're stopping is looking at your cell phone or on social media or watching the news, the cortisol is still coursing through your body. The fight and flight mechanisms are still in place, and you are not resting. So here's your life work. I'm going to give you a few little assignments as I wrap up here. The first one is, what's the baby step that you can take? What's the tiniest little step, that 5-degree change in direction that you can make for your recovery, for your performance, so that you can finish the race strongly? As you'll hear from the next speaker, I mean, you could be at the height of your career 10 years from now, 20 years from now, 30 years from now, and beyond. But you have to take care of yourself first. So this is your assignment to do, to take care of you. At the beach, this was our leadership team. I'm the guy with the hair, by the way. I once had hair. Those guys that are sitting on the sand, they were our leaders. They modeled it for us. They took care of themselves. They were able to do the job just as well, better than the kids that were half their age. That's your job, to do it first for yourself. To take care of yourself is not selfish. To take care of yourself creates a model for others to take care of themselves. And then it becomes cultural, that resilience is a cultural thing. Resilient teams change the world. Every company is in turnaround. We talked about this right before I came up. Every company is impacted by the disruption that is the new norm, and it won't change anytime soon. So we've got to be resilient in the face of all of that. We have an assessment tool. It's yours as a gift. That's the link. You can find out exactly where you stand right now, what your assessment score is. It's an audit, mentally, emotionally, physically. And when I say spiritually, I mean that what you're doing in life is in alignment with your values. And that's the test. You get your score, and then you'll get resources that are specifically directed to where you're lacking or where your improvement can be. I want to end with a very important quote, because both at the beach and in every business that I've ever been a part of, the most important thing has been the attitude that we had, the attitude that we would embrace. Attitude is everything in some ways. And this quote by Chuck Swindoll, I think, is really, really powerful. So if you can say it along with me, that's great. Otherwise, you can just read it to yourself. As part of part of your mobile app, you will have resources, including this quote. It's a quote that you might want to share with members of your team or members of your family. Actually, this quote first came to my attention when I was thinking about our son when he was 9 years old and wanting to inspire him. He was feeling a little down. And I gave him this quote, and he hung it on his wall. And then when he went off to college, I didn't know he did it, but he took it with him. And when I went to visit him in college, it was right there hanging in his dorm room. So I knew it meant something to him. Let's read it all together. The longer I live, the more I realize the impact of attitude on life. Attitude to me is more important than facts. It is more important than the past, than education, than money, than circumstances, than failure, than successes, than what other people think or say or do. It is more important than appearance, giftedness, or skill. It will make or break a company, a church, a home. The remarkable thing is that we have a choice every day regarding the attitude we will embrace for that day. We cannot change our past. We cannot change the fact that people will act in a certain way. We cannot change the inevitable. The only thing we can do is play on the one string we have, and that is our attitude. I am convinced that life is 10% what happens to me and 90% how I react to it. And so it is with you. We are in charge of our attitudes. It has been a blessing to be here. When I put my feet on the floor this morning, I didn't feel any exhaustion or any dread or any anxiety. I felt appreciation and gratitude and love for the opportunity to be here and to share this information with all of you. Thank you so very, very much.